Alright, so today we'll be building a full stack nextjs app using the latest version of Next, server actions, Prisma as the ORM, mongodb to store our data. We'll look to leverage some of the latest features within Next, such as suspense, post notifications, and maybe even search. So with that said, we'll jump in and get started. Kick us off, we'll use the npx to command to create the latest version of the nextjs app. We add a space then dot because we want to install it in the current directory. For this project, we'll say yes to TypeScript, yes to ESLint, yes to Tailwind, no to SRC, yes to the app router, yes to the turbo pack, no to the import alias. And we'll give it a few minutes to finish installing. So with that, we have successfully installed the latest version of Next. Before we set up our connection to MongoDB, we'll just make sure that this is working properly. In the page.tsx, let's remove the current div that has the initial boiler code tag. Just going to add home page within the tag. We'll remove the image import. So the only thing that we have is a export default function named home that's going to return a message once we launch our local host. If we click on the global CSS, we'll remove the initial boiler code from within it. And we'll add the body, HTML, root, and .app. What we want to get accomplished is we want to define or set the height, width, and text size of our app. So we'll set the height to 100%, the width to 100%, and we'll go at apply text. I like for it to be small. And then the last thing we'll do, just to ensure our project's compatibility, I'm going to set define the package manager so that as we install various dependencies in the project, we don't run into any compatibility concerns with the latest version of Next. So underneath the scripts object, we'll add parentheses and state the package manager. And for it, the value will be npm 10.5, 10.5.2. We'll then add some overrides. The first will be for React. And we'll say $React. Next will be React DOM. And that will be $React DOM. And then finally will be next. And this will be, as you probably guessed, $next. Okay, so this cares for the initial overrides. Now we're ready just to spin up our app just to confirm it's working. So we'll type npm run dev. This is going to run on localhost 3000. So browser and launch it. Okay. And as you can see on the screen, we have home page without any concerns. So with the project set up, let's go ahead and establish our database cluster. We'll be using MongoDB to do the heavy lifting for us. Once you're logged in, you'll be redirected to your organization default window view. If you don't have a MongoDB account, it's free to sign up. Feel free to sign up with either GitHub, Google, or with email. Once you're in, we're going to view all projects. Good morning, everyone. Just building a full stack application using the latest version of Next. This will be a blog app, and what we really want to get accomplished today is utilize some of the latest features within Next just to optimize the project experience. Once you're redirected, we'll click on New Project. Go ahead and name your project whatever you like. We'll keep the default permissions, then click Create Project. Once the project's created, we'll then need to create a cluster. The cluster is what we're using to store our data. So we'll click Create Cluster. For this project, the free tier will work just fine. As your project scales, you may want to consider choosing one of the different options. We'll keep the default cluster name. This could be updated if you would like. The provider, we're going to remain with AWS. And it should default to the region that's closest to you, but just click it just to be sure. And then once everything looks good, we'll click Create Deployment. Hey, good morning, my friend. Thanks for being patient with me. Had some technical difficulties earlier, but we should be back in business now. Can you hear me okay? Once the cluster next, we'll need to establish a connection string. That string is going to provide a username and password. First, we'll need to create a database user. So just click Create User. This to choose a connection method. For the project, because we're using Next.js, we're going to select MongoDB for VS Code. And in this example, we know we'll need to install MongoDB, which we can come back and do that in a moment. And we'll also make sure that we gain access to this connection string. We'll go ahead and copy it. We're going to need to store this within our project. So for right now, we're done with our database. We'll head back to the code editor and we're ready to set up Prisma. So we'll go ahead and temporarily stop the server from running. So to set up Prisma, there's a few commands that we'll need to run. The first is to install Prisma, but because we're just going to need it in development, we're going to type the command npm i-d for dependency or development, excuse me, and then add Prisma. Next, we'll need to install the Prisma client. So npm i at prisma/client. This is going to give us access to our models throughout the application and also the IntelliSense that come with it so that we can easily access the functions that we're using to update our data. And then finally, we'll run the command npx prisma init. Yep. This is going to give us the Prisma directory to allow us to set to include the MongoDB connection string in addition to setting up the model or the schema to organize our data in the database. And our Prisma client is going to use this model. It's going to give us access to the model throughout the project so that we can perform all of the CRUD operations without any issue. So we see that we already have the .getignore file. Don't forget to add the .env once we make any commits. So we'll go ahead and update that now. We can close out the package.json and the page.tsx for right now. We'll hit the .getignore and let's add our .env file as suggested. And then within the database URL, we'll just remove the default Postgres connection string and we'll paste in the MongoDB connection string that we just copied. At the end of that string, add test, as this is the name of the database. We'll close this out and then back in the schema.prisma file. This is where we're going to create add the model for our schema. And in this project, I think we'll just name it post just to keep it simple. First thing we want to do, you see that we have our data source listed here. We'll remove Postgres and replace it with MongoDB. Everything else remains the same. And then for our model, we're going to name this model post. And let's go to the docs, makes it a lot easier. So we've updated this, add the connection string. Now we're ready to set up our schemas. Install the client. This is the function that we'll add in just a moment. Documentation does a very good job of kind of laying everything out for you so that you have a good idea of how to set this up if this is something that you are brand new to doing. We basically just followed these instructions, did it a little backwards, but we started with the install and development and set up the client, which is in the next step. And then I just added the initialize to init Prisma. So what we want to do is basically just copy this model. It's already listed. And we're going to paste it into VS Code. We'll remove the user for right now. We will come back and add that at a later time. As a matter of fact, the next video, we'll probably go ahead and add in off.js or next off. I don't know what it exactly is called, but we'll add that in as our authentication of choice. But we're just going to follow the exact same model as listed. Big difference that I wanted to call out is that it does use a object ID for MongoDB, wherein if you were using Postgres, you wouldn't need to include this because it's not using a object ID. I do want to add the time that this was created, and that is going to be date time at default. And I think it is now, and pass that in. And then we'll also capture the updated at. That's going to be date time, and this will be at updated at. And this should be with a D to keep it consistent. Okay. Then with this, the last thing that I want to do before we get started is add the connection string. That's going to that's going to establish the connection from our application to MongoDB. If there isn't one, it will establish it. And if there is a connection string, if it is a connection, then obviously it'll just leverage what's already there. I already have this typed out. This is just simple boiler, so you don't have to worry about memorizing or anything. But long story short, basically what it is doing is it is confirming that there is a connection. If there's a connection that's needed, it'll establish that connection, and it won't attempt to keep running that same connection over and over. That can bog down and break your application really quick. So within the root of the project, add a folder named lib. Within lib, we're going to add a file named prisma.ts. We'll paste in this code that you see on the screen. And it's the exact same thing that is within the documentation that we just reviewed. This is just a different way of writing the exact same thing. All right, so once we have this established, we're ready to push these changes to MongoDB. I think it's a DB push, but let's just make sure. Let's see. Yep. We'll click allow. Okay. So now, as you can see on screen, we've applied the collection named post to the database, so we can organize all of our content within the post schema. Your database indexes are now in sync with your Prisma client, and we have access to Prisma Generate. If we go to our MongoDB cluster, click Browse Collections, you'll see that we are greeted with the model, but we have the database name of test, and we have our post listed within that database. So we have access. The post schema is now pushed to our MongoDB cluster, and we're now able to organize content within this schema, and we can perform all CRUD operations with it. So great. We won't need this for right now. We won't need the Prisma documentation anymore at this point. We'll go ahead and keep up the nextjs. What we're looking to do basically is fetch data. There's a few different approaches on how you can go about it. The traditional approach is using a API. We're going to be using a ORM or database. This kind of talks through all of the different data fetching patterns, and there are a lot of them. But the one that we're going to leverage is using a server action. And we're also going to bring in suspense. So I think what we'll do first is let's just begin to, let's spin up our application one more time. So in the terminal, go ahead and type in the command npm run dev. Okay, looks good. So we're at the point now where we want to establish the way we're going to interact with our database and update data. Traditionally, we would have used an API, but because we aren't using APIs and that is a method of the past, we're going to be using server actions. So within the lib directory, let's add another folder named actions. We'll also add a file named actions. We'll also add a file named blog actions.ts. We'll eventually have multiple actions within this, so we'll organize the data a little bit. We'll come back and add comments and all of that other fun stuff. But for right now, we'll just start by setting up the initial blog actions. So we'll need to add the use server directive. This is going to give us access to all of these functions throughout the app. Let's go ahead and bring in Prisma. The Prisma function that we're looking for. It's not, the IntelliSense isn't picking up on it just yet. It's okay. We'll go ahead and bring in revalidate data. No, revalidate path. Excuse me, that's coming from nextjs. We'll also need redirect. That's going to come from next navigation. So we have our imports. The only thing I haven't brought in just yet is Prisma, but I'll work on that in just a second. The first action that I want to establish is the ability to create a post. So we'll create a function named export async function create post. We'll pass in form data. From this form data, we need to destructure the two things that we're storing within the database. That is the title, and that will come as form data.get. That's the method that we're using. We're going to be looking for the title, and we want to store it as a string. The next variable that we want to destructure from that form data, or content we want to destructure from the form data, is named content. Let me make sure I did name it that. Yep. We'll create a const named content. and set it equal to form data.get, and we'll be getting the content as a string. And once we've captured that, we need to do a little bit of validation to make sure that we actually have it. So we'll say if we don't have the title, or if we don't have the content, we just simply want to throw a new error. And what we'll be passing is that we're missing fields. Fields are missing. But in the event we do have this data, from there we want to await. Remember, this is asynchronous. We want to get access to Prisma. There we go. And that should be coming from .. because we're in the same directory. We're both within the same main directory, which is lib. We just need to go up and out one folder to get the Prisma. We'll go prisma.post. It's not seeing the IntelliSense there. Prisma.post.create. And what we'll be creating is obviously a post. So of the data that we just captured, we want to pass in the title and the content. And then once we've created this, we're going to use this on a separate page. So we want to redirect the user back to the home route once we have created this post. But first, I want to make sure that we do have the Prisma connection established. So within the main page.tsx, let's go ahead and inside of that function, we'll create a const named post, and we'll set it equal to, and we'll need to make this an asynchronous function, the home page, because it is running on the server. So if we go up to the name of the function where it says export default, just add async between default and function. And then within the home function, we're going to assign post to await. And what we'll be awaiting is to get, no, let me think for a second. This is going to be, I think it is find all. Wait, post. Something. Let's remove this for now. Here's the client, but why is the IntelliSense not working? Well, I thought I wouldn't use it again. I guess I lied. Should have the IntelliSense there. Just building a simple nextjs blog app using server actions to capture our data. If you have any questions about anything, look, don't hesitate to ask. I'll be happy to answer any concerns that you may have. So good question. So in order to connect a database with an authenticated user, we'll just need to set up some form of authentication. I'll do it in the next video. We may do it later on today, depending upon what my time looks like. But ultimately, we can use something like auth.js to set up a connection that we can use, to set up our authentication, and we can use Google OAuth, and we can use credentials as well too, if that's something that you may be interested in. But That's the way that we would go about connecting it. Great question. What authentication, do you have an authentication provider preference that you like to use? I typically use auth.js. That normally gets the job done for me. I like to just stick with Google because it's secure, it's simple, and it just makes life that much easier. But we can certainly use something different if that will be something that you'd like to see. But what authentication do you normally use? Just let me know if you have a preference of what authentication provider, when we can absolutely use it. But we'll use auth.js. So within this, we'll go const post is equal to await, and we'll say prisma dot post dot find mini. Make sure this thing imports it. Go. Dot post dot find mini. Let's just test this out. Go with post dot length. If it is equal to 0, and the question mark, we'll div p tag no host available. And then we'll say or. Here's where we'll go host. Actually, you can't do it like that. Sorry. Do it like this. We'll go post.map. And for each post, we're going to name it post. Sorry, my syntax off. Post.map. Each one we'll name it post. And for each post for right now, we'll just go key post ID. And we'll just say post.name. And we'll get in that error. That's right, because it's going to want me to pass this in as TypeScript. And the way I'm passing it back, got it. So for right now, we'll just keep that there. Let's just see what we have on screen. I knew I didn't run something because my IntelliSense wasn't working. I think this is Prisma Generate. I knew it was missing something. Stop the server just a second. Oh wow, it has it right here in the terminal. This is why I love the terminal. I think it's npm prisma generate. I can't remember. Let's try that. Clear npm prisma generate. X. I think it is npx. There we go. Now let's hit clear. Let's go back to npm run dev. Just building a simple blog Next.js application using Prisma as the ORM. And MongoDB as the database. What is that generate command? Oh. All right, let's try this. npx npm exe prisma migrate dev. Prisma generates. Okay. Now let's try it. So we would use something like off.js to help with that, with authentication. And then you could just integrate it from there. Let's see, npm at prisma / client. So the client didn't generate. Okay. Let's make sure it did. It appears it didn't take my Prisma client. I probably should have checked that again. But let's see if we get any errors when we start this time. Let's npm run dev. And it tells you want me to run it. Typing too fast, sorry. Prisma generates. I said I didn't make any sense. Prisma generates. So I already had a Prisma client generated fine. Run dev. Let's see what we got here. You're wrestling with me this morning. I'll add in direct. Oh, I shouldn't have to. Shouldn't have to. Prisma. Sorry. That's right. MPX Prisma DB. Okay. person should have been just for Postgres. Now that I think about it. Let's try it now. Oh. She is giving me a hard time today. Here's my fonts. Let's try this. Fonts prisma is equal to mobile this prisma or new prisma client if process env node underscore env doesn't exist. If it isn't production, and we want to run the global this dot prisma. Change this to client.